Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Never Thirst Again. I am excited that you decided to join me on today. And of course, like always, I wanted to remind you guys to all subscribe to this particular podcast through Amazon Music at www.amazonmusic.com/ Never Thirst Again. You can subscribe through Podbean, Spotify, and of course, a host of other platforms that will also be listed in the description of this podcast episode. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get right on in here. I really wanted to do that by posing a quick question to you guys. And the question is this: have you ever been caught red handed in a lie, or simply put, just doing something terribly wrong or outside of your character? It's a question that makes most of us feel very uncomfortable, and it lends an air of shame if you really just let it settle in there for a few moments. These are usually those moments we wish we could take back so that we could never do what we did, or at the very least, we wish that we'd responded differently. I remember when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I stole $10 from my mother's purse because I really wanted to buy some Barbie clothes for my doll. When my mom had gotten into the car, and coincidentally, she started looking through her purse just to make sure that her cash was there for gas. Now, I sat there, I watched as she looked frantically through her wallet, through her purse, through everywhere, and still wasn't finding the $10 bill. Well, she finally asked me, "Did you see $10 that was sitting in my purse?" "Oh," I answered. "I did find a $10 bill when I got in the car. It must have been yours." Now, obviously, that was an outright lie. And she knew it. She saw straight through me. And my mom said, "You didn't find that on the floor. You took it from my purse, didn't you?" "I know you did because I tucked it away in the pocket behind my wallet." And she was right. There was nothing left for me to do except to just admit the truth and take my punishment. At that time, I remembered feeling so embarrassed, ashamed, and even disappointed that I had even stooped so low as to take money from my own mother's purse. It didn't speak well of my character at all, which, of course, was still developing, but I knew it was wrong. I felt dirty. I felt completely tainted. So after that, I was determined to do better moving forward. Moments like this are supposed to change us for the better. For some people who are in a little bit too deep, that doesn't quite happen. But for others, the impact is just too much to bear. Such is the case in a story that I was reading a few days ago. The author is unknown, but whomever you are, I pass this credit along to you for providing these life changing words of inspiration. And the story goes like this: Jack took a long look at his speedometer before slowing down. He was doing 73 in a 55 zone. The flashing red in his rearview mirror insisted he pulled over quickly, but Jack let the car coast. Fourth time in many months. How could a guy get caught so often? When his car had slowed to 10 miles an hour, Jack pulled over, but only partially. Let the cop worry about the potential traffic hazard, he thought to himself. Maybe some other car will tweak his backside with a mirror. He slumped into his seat, the collar of his trench coat covering his ears. He tapped the steering wheel, doing his best to look bored, his eyes on the mirror. The cop was stepping out of his car. The big pad was right in his hands. "Bob? Bob from church?" Jack sunk even further into his trench coat. This was worse than the coming ticket. A Christian cop catching a guy from his own church. A guy who happened to be a little eager to get home after a long day at the office. A guy he was about to play golf with tomorrow. Jack was tempted to leave the window shut long enough to gain the psychological edge, but decided on a different attack. Jumping out of the car, he approached a man he saw every Sunday, a man he'd never seen in uniform. "Hi, Bob. Fancy meeting you like this." "Hello, Jack." No smile. "Guess you caught me red-handed in a rush to see my wife and kids." "Yeah, I guess," said Bob. Bob seemed uncertain. "I've seen some long days at the office lately. I'm afraid I bent the rules a bit just this once." Jack toed at a pebble on the pavement. "Diane said something about roast beef and potatoes tonight. Know what I mean?" "I know what you mean. I also know that you have a reputation in our precinct." Ouch. This was not going in the right direction. Time to change tactics, Jack thought to himself. "What'd you clock me at?" 71. "Would you sit back in your car, please?" "Now, wait a minute here, Bob. I checked as soon as I saw you. I was barely nudging 65. The lie, it seemed to come easier with every single ticket, he realized. "Please, Jack." In the car. Flustered, Jack hunched himself through the still open door. Slamming it shut, he stared at the dashboard. He was in no rush to open the window. The minutes ticked by. Bob scribbled away on the pad. Why hadn't he asked for a driver's license? Whatever the reason, it would be a month of Sundays before Jack ever sat near this cop again. A tap on the door jerked his head to the left. There was Bob, a folded paper in hand. Jack rolled down the window, a mere 2 inches, just enough room for Bob to pass him the slip. "Thanks." Jack could not keep the sneer out of his voice. Bob returned to his car without a word. Jack watched his retreat in the mirror, bottom teeth scratching the upper lip. When Bob vanished inside his car, Jack unfolded the sheet of paper. How much was this going to cost him? Wait a minute. What was this? Some kind of joke? Certainly not a ticket. Jack began to read. "Dear Jack, once upon a time I had a daughter. She was 6 when killed by a car. You guessed it, a speeding driver. A fine and 3 months in jail, and the man was free. Free to hug his daughters, all 3 of them. I only had one, and I'm going to have to wait until heaven before I can ever hug her again. 1,000 times I've tried to forgive that man. 1,000 times I thought I had. Maybe I did, but I need to do it again. Even now, pray for me and be careful. My son is all I have left. Bob." Jack shifted uncomfortably in his trench coat. Then he twisted around in time to see Bob's car pull away and head down the road. Jack watched until it disappeared. A full 15 minutes later, he too pulled away and drove slowly home, praying for forgiveness and hugging a surprised wife and kids when he arrived. To my listeners, think about the level of transparency that the cop had in sharing his story. He was completely honest with Jack in saying that his daughter was killed by someone who was speeding, but that it took him a long time to forgive that man, and maybe he even needed to do it again because he realized that there was still some form of resentment there. He could have very easily had given Jack that speeding ticket of the highest amount possible and then just go on his merry way. But instead, he did something a little different. He offered grace. He also showed love. And he did this without being accusatory or without beating him over the head because of his sin. He was caught in a lie, a couple of them. He just simply wanted Jack to understand the way that his choices could possibly affect the lives of other people around him. Maybe we should all remember that very sentiment today as we work to repent quickly when we come face to face with the wrongs that we have done. Build your character by freely admitting to those wrongs so that you can be better examples of what it looks like to gracefully rise after you've fallen. It's definitely something that I've taken to heart as a child, as an adult, and most definitely, I pray that moving into those elderly years, which are much, much later down the road, I absolutely pray that those sentiments, those lessons of morale stick with me. And of course, I want to make sure that we pass those good things down to our children. But guys, believe it or not, that is all I have for you today. I thank you so much for tuning in to Never Thirst Again. And just as another quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe to Never Thirst Again through Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music through www.amazonmusic.com/Never Thirst Again, and of course, a host of other platforms that will be listed in the description of this podcast episode. As always, I wish you guys the very best weekend ahead. Take care and God bless.